The Springboro Board of Education special meeting, Tuesday, June 3rd, 2014. Roll call.
Anderson.
Here.
Malone.
Here.
Attorney.
Here.
Pagano.
Here.
Stuckey.
Here. We have the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 122, adoption of the agendas or motion to adopt the agenda. So moved. Is there a second? Second. Discussion? Roll call?
Anderson.
Yes.
Malone.
Yes.
Attorney.
Yes.
Pagano.
Yes.
Stuckey.
Yes.
Item 2.1, teacher, you want to introduce us?
Yes, tonight we have the Springboro Junior High here to do the inspirational message. So, Ms. Coulter, are you going to lead them, or is...
I am not, but I do want to say the teachers have done a wonderful job putting together this 20% project. If they want to tell a little bit about that, but the few presentations that I did go to, it's amazing. These kids were able to research the things that they were interested in, and that it really showed that they put a lot of time and effort.
Great.
Sorry.
Well, good evening. I'm Emily Hemmerdahl. This is Mrs. Jordan, Stephanie Jordan, and Jessica Miller. The three of us teach 8th grade language arts here at the junior high. We would like to thank the board for giving us the opportunity to showcase some of our students this evening and their 20% projects. The 20% project is an independent choice project based on Google's 20% time. Engineers at Google are given 20% of their work time to work on something that's creative and inspirational, something that inspires them. So we decided to take that philosophy and instill it into our classrooms and have gotten the most amazing responses from our students. We encouraged our students to make the project product-based, and so in the end result they had to show something or do some kind of a service. Many of my students some of them have digitally composed new music. Some of them created hand-ag lines, learned to play the guitar, programmed robots, learned Japanese, and the list goes on and on. And they're going to talk about some of their kids' projects.
Some of the projects that our students did were building a firefighting robot, an oxy-hydrogen generator, which converts water into gas to run motors in case of being stuck up. Fundraising for the Children's Medical Centers, our special needs class, medical research, anti-bullying campaigns, and we had a student who built his own fire thing to melt down metal and make his own sword.
Students worked on this project all of second semester. They began by choosing a topic and writing and presenting a proposal to the class. They were encouraged then to get a mentor who works in their field that they've chosen. They then created their own timelines, their own deadlines. They blogged about their process, and then finally they created a presentation, and they presented that to their peers. At the end of the presentations, they discussed the lessons that they've learned in the project, and again, I was delighted at their level of reflection. They discussed the importance of sticking to a timeline. They discussed setting up a realistic timeline in the first place, getting the product done ahead of time so they could work more on their presentation, the importance of not procrastinating. All of these things are good lessons. These lifelong lessons are ones that they have to learn through experience, and they cannot be taught in the classroom through lecture, for example. They're also essential for academic and workplace success. So tonight you will see Anna Bellotti, who is passionate about animal rights. She created an animal rights group here at the school and on Facebook. A portion of her project was on advocacy and informing people about animal rights. So she'll also be teaching you about the atrocity of puppy mills tonight. You'll also see Ariana Catalano, and she was the event coordinator for her fundraiser for the community, the Springboro Community Center. And you'll also see Alex Myers, who will be demonstrating his project as well, which is with robots. So we'll send it over to Anna.
Yeah, first. It's always a good start, thanks. So my name is, like she said, Anna Bellotti. When she first told me that we were doing a 20% project, I was like, oh, I want to do something with animals because they are my passion, and my mom's very happy I'm here talking about animals to other people because that's all I talk about when I'm home. So yeah. So today, as much as I want to have fun with you guys, it is a sad topic, and I hate to say that. My two products were a Facebook page, which has like 150 members, that's pretty good, because my mom shared it and all her friends joined. And then the other one was this shirt. It says Students Against Animal Abuse. It has little paw prints on the back. So if you guys want to join, you are welcome to. This isn't something I'm going to give up just because the project's over. This is definitely something that I want to pursue and help animals because they don't have voices, they can't ask for help, and that's what we're here for. Like I said, it's on puppy mills. A puppy mill is, that is the process of making the Facebook page, and then a lot of you, I don't know if you guys know about puppy mills, I didn't, but a puppy mill is basically where dogs are kept in terrible condition and they are bred until near death. And it's really sad and heartbreaking to see these. There are some more pictures coming up. My inspiration for this project is definitely my love for animals. I actually have a dog, my dog Buffy. We actually had to put her down. She was from a puppy mill, and you can see that her belly sags a little bit. I think she had around 500 babies, which is obviously a lot. And usually dogs shouldn't be able to handle that. She should not have been bred that much. So, at the Dayton Mall, there is a store called Fetch, and I'm sure you guys have heard of it. And you guys, the cute little puppies, oh my gosh, I want to go get a puppy and look at it, and play with it, and buy stuff from there. Well, if you're buying puppies from there, they are most likely from puppy mills. And obviously, when you buy stuff from there, the money goes to support the puppy mills, and that is the complete opposite of what we should be doing. So, these are some of the living conditions that dogs are in. You can see the dog up there. He's in pretty rough condition, and those are the living areas that they have. Very small spaces, and I'm sure if you guys have dogs, you let them roam around and stuff. These dogs usually, I actually watched a video of like 12 beagles that were rescued from a puppy mill, and they released them from the cage, and it's their first time being outside and playing in the grass, and I cried, but we don't have to talk about that. So my main purpose was just to be aware of this could very well be going on in Springboro, in Ohio. So I did, for my actual presentation that I did in front of my peers, it had circus, animal experimentation, and SeaWorld, and those are all ways that people figure out, like the circus, they force animals to do stuff that they're not supposed to do. But this I decided to do because, first of all, my dog, and second of all, this could very well be happening here. And it's important that we stop this because, like I said, we are the animals' voices, and they can't stop this. We are the ones that need to help them. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ariana Catalano, and for my project, I wanted to do something that involved music, and I didn't want to do something that I just wrote a song or I learned how to play instruments. I wanted to do something that made a difference. So I decided to do a benefit concert to raise money for the Springboro Community Assistance Center, which is an organization that started serving 12 families and is currently serving 40 families, and it runs strictly on donations, so I don't really understand. I don't know how they do it all because that's a lot to do, but they're really cool. I've done it a few times, it's really awesome. But, so basically, I set up a concert where if you wanted to come in, you would pay $5 for admission, or if you brought a donation item, you would get in for $3. And I originally set my goal for $1,000, and we made $1,400. So, yay! I was really excited. I had a lot of people there. I had more than I expected to have, like more people than I expected there. I honestly would wake up with nightmares because I was afraid that no one would show up and I would just be me, and then this would be like a total fail, but it wasn't, so I was really excited. And there was this, I have a really funny story, there was this one guy, and he walked in, and he was this big biker guy, and he scared me when he walked in because he had like the whole leather jacket, he came in on his motorcycle, and I was a little freaked out. And then, so he walks in, and it's late, the concert's almost over, and we were $20 away from our goal. And I was a little discouraged because I was afraid that I wasn't going to reach my goal. And so I announced it over the microphone, and he reaches over and hands me the $20 that I needed. So, as overwhelmed as I was, I started crying. And then my mom started crying. And then the biker started crying. And so, I just thought it was kind of ironic. But, so that was a really happy moment for me because it was like an emotional roller coaster, just going up and down and up and down and up and down. I was like really excited at the beginning, my adrenaline was going because it was actually really cold, but I was like, I'm not cold, I'm just perfectly fine. But then the concert ended and I was like, oh my god, I'm freezing. But, so, the concert was a success and I was super excited, and we actually have a video of most of it. Which without them, that wouldn't have been there, which was really cool, and I was excited because I didn't know how I was going to get all the performers together because I have to be honest, I kind of procrastinated just a little bit. But yeah, so it was a success, and I was really excited, so that's my project.
In case you can't see it, I'll just put it on the table. So this is the robot I created, and its purpose is to be able to fight fires and make it safer for firefighters when they're in road.
Well, go ahead and demo it on the table there.
On the table.
Sure.
I'm just kidding.
I'll demo it later, but safer. Okay. So, the whole thing started out, I'm working with a group of students. They're not all here tonight. I'm the representative for that group. The other people involved in this were Zach Baker, Tony Blackburn, and Nate Dolan, and I'm Alex Myers. And so we created this firefighting robot, and the whole thing started out that we thought we were going to have to raise over $1,000 to create it because, well, it's expensive, of course. But then we talked to Mr. Korzian at the high school, he's the physics teacher there, and he's also leads the Robot Wars program, and he agreed to help us with this, and I'd just like to thank him. He's not here tonight, but he was a great help. And so I have a video here of the robot. When it shoots water, it gets a range about maybe 30 feet. So it's pretty far, and it's not the perfect what you would want, but it is more of a proof of concept. Scoot forward. There's our target, the red cone, because we're not allowed to light a fire. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Lower. We got Tony. So, of course, since we demoed it on the school grounds, we could not light a fire. So it never actually got to put out a fire. I'd like to eventually with it. And so the whole process with making it, probably the most time-consuming thing with creating this robot was doing all the measurements. That was probably the hardest and what took the most time out of creating this robot, because you have to be very precise because you're dealing with metal and you can't really start over. You have to get a whole new sheet if you mess up. And so the robot itself, when you add all the parts together, costs around $800. And so our group didn't manage to raise all that, so Mr. Corzan owns most of the parts. And so he's keeping the robot, but we're allowed to use it when we want to. So the robot uses different, it uses a servo motor to control the arm on top, and it also uses 2 larger motors for the wheels. And we have the smaller tank, as you can see on top, is pumped up to 120 psi. When the air pressure is released, it pushes the water out from the largest tank and out through the tube on the arm for the hose. And I'll demonstrate it. And
Miss Vincent, hold your hand.
Yeah. And it weighs around 25 pounds, probably. So. I would like to shoot water out of it. I don't want to get anyone wet. But if it did have water in it,
here's $20.
Well, if you have a bike pump, then that'd be fine. Yeah. So I can pump up the air. But so that's the whole function of the robot. It was actually not as complicated as you would think to create it, because unless you were going to build it completely from scratch, we had to buy different parts. So that was my 20% project. I had a great time creating this. I really enjoy engineering and stuff that goes along with that.
Great.
Thank you very much. They're all 3 great projects. Very nice. Thanks to all the teachers who support them. Now, as we go through, if you're welcome to stay, but if you don't, any of the participants want to stay, you're welcome to leave. 2.2, Springboro Education Association report. Do we have any report? 2.3, item 2.3, Springboro Classified Employees Association report. Any such report? Item 2.4, prearranged public participation. I didn't see any names on there. And then item 2.5, public participation. Anybody? We'll go to item 3.1, approval of personnel items.
evening. We are here tonight to bring forward for the superintendent the approval of our personnel items. It is one page. Luckily tonight we have 30 items, and mostly it is to approve to employ our extended school year personnel, and these people will be working with our special education students this summer for extended school year. Those are special education students who, without some added work over the summer with trained personnel, would lose ground in their academics. So we are looking to have approval for items 1 through 30.
Is there a motion? So moved. Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? Roll call?
Anderson,
Yes.
Maloney,
Yes.
Petroni,
Yes.
Pagano,
Yes.
Stuckey.
Yes. Motion passes. Item 3.2, approval to create educational technologies.
The technology position that we are bringing forward will report to the Executive Director of Instruction, which is Mrs. Strittenberger. This is a full-time position. We are adding this position as a secondary person to help with many of the new technological supports that are going to need to be in place for next year through the curriculum department and other sources.
And we have discussed that in work session, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
It was part of the entire package that we talked about moving forward for next year with technology.
Is there a motion? So moved. Is there a second? Second. Any discussion?
Mr. President, just a question. Ms. Vincent, is the position reflected in the 5-year forecast that we adopted last meeting?
Tammy, can you answer that?
As far as the dollar amounts, or as far as the position in and of itself?
Or the cost of bringing in a person on board, is that reflected in the 5-year forecast?
Well, I guess I'd like to clarify that, because one of the things, and as we looked at the research and looking at the dollars related to adoptions, just not loud. As it relates to the adoptions, and part of the proposal of the adoptions was to have a bit of a cost savings in that arena so that we can support our technologies that were needed to support this initiative. So to say that that secondary specialist specifically was in there, not necessarily. However, the goal was to advance ourselves in that area of technology based on some of the research and the documentation through that research with our proposed adoptions. So, I don't want to dance around that question, but the point is that we knew that through the research we were going to see some cost savings with adoptions as a whole, and that technology was a part of the supports that are related to that proposal.
What's the compensation for this position?
Well, I think when we presented, Tammy, I don't think you were there, but Andrea and I actually presented, there's an $876,000 savings. 2.4 million or 2.5 million, and we were going to be at 1.9 for the textbook adoption. So with that, we mentioned there would be a couple $100,000 for the back end work that needed to take place, plus staffing, and we were going to do our own instructional side of technology, and we were going to outsource the break fix and server technology. So those pieces were there, so it is within what we're looking at. But as far as it being specifically,
And that's why I specifically said it's not necessarily in with adoptions, but it's in the technology component, or those lines, that the savings was coming out of some of the adoptions.
right.
Yeah, I guess I would just suggest that this board accommodate that somehow, so that as we track our budgets, we debit whatever line that we're taking the money from, and then we add it to benefits and personnel, so that when we monitor the budget, then we're not even monitoring yet, since it's not in the fiscal year yet. But when we monitor, we want to know whether we're running over or under, in all due respect to the academic. So I would really make that just fun thing.
I guess the same question. What's the compensation level that you're targeting for this position?
It partly will depend on who we get for the position. We are looking at posting it and looking at actually it being some teachers that have had further education with technology, computer technology, masters, and so that will depend on where they fall on the salary schedule.
Well, the ripple effect of that is, though, if we pull a teacher out of the classroom and replace that teacher, the actual cost will probably be around $50,000. $52,500 is what we're at for a new teacher with benefits.
So the budget that you're proposing could be a range of $50,000 to $80,000 for this position, is what you're telling me?
Yes.
And I guess this was in your salary plan you put together in 5-year forecast, or was this not a salary plan with staffing plan?
This was not part of my staffing plan. Like Tammy said, it was part of the entire technology budget.
And the savings was not captured for technology in the 5-year forecast, or that was adopted?
It was.
So this would be an increase of anywhere from $250,000 to $320,000 a year for 5 years.
A year?
For 5 years. $250,000 to $320,000 for 5 years in the next 5-year forecast.
Well, we had the savings of $876,000, so it's going to come out of that.
Oh, sorry, back up and ask the question again. The savings was already captured in the 5-year forecast that was adopted last week. The reduction in technology plan was already captured at $1.9 million versus $2.4 million last week.
The textbook adoption, the $2.4 million textbook adoption was already adopted, and then we also placed money in 17 and 18 that wasn't. My assumption is that out of that textbook adoption, the textbooks themselves are not going to cost that total amount. The technologists will fit in with that. Is that what you're saying? I think that's what you would discuss.
Yeah, I'm just asking, is $1.9 million in the 5-year forecast for technology for this adoption or 2.4?
It's 2.4.
So
And then the 2 years that we had nothing budgeted, it's $500,000 a year.
So it's 2.9 million in the 5-year forecast, not 2.4. I'm just trying to.
Well, the original textbook adoption was 2.4. That didn't account for science and social studies textbook adoptions that wouldn't happen. That wasn't part of the original textbook adoption that was done in 13. So that has been added to the 5-year for 17 and 18.
So this additional up to $320,000 you're saying is going to be reflected in the next 5-year forecast, which is 6 months from now.
Yes. There might be some, as Jim said, reappropriation of the object levels that hits. All of it will be hitting the 500 textbook adoptions. Some of it will be hitting the 1s and 200s for the benefits and salaries portion. We'll just have to reallocate the money that's already plugged into the textbook adoptions, but it's already in there.
Well, the reason for that, David, is when you go digital, you have to have the people in place to take care of it, so it becomes part of the cost.
Well, I'm not asking that question. I missed the last 5-year forecast and had concerns with direction anyway. I'm just trying to figure out if this was part of the plan. Maybe it could have gotten put into the maze and said you'll have to do it in October. I'm just trying to understand what the cost to the district would be long term. And what was the 5-year forecast? It would be a $250,000 to $320,000 reduction. And you're saying tonight that there'll be shifts and this salary increased personnel costs will not reduce the surplus by $250,000 to $320,000 within the next 6 months.
So then 2.4 better.
I guess I would just like to emphasize the importance of getting these things right, because the textbook purchase is not a forever thing. There's a plan. And after textbooks are updated, there should be a reduction in the amount of money that we're spending on that. However, salaries, unless we're planning to release this person at the end of a defined period of time, which I don't think is the case. I think this is planned that this person would be here for an indefinite period of time. So that is, I guess I would say more of a perpetuating expense. And so when we don't have that in the personnel services line forecast, then it becomes misleading, because the expectation would be for materials services, that those things do not perpetuate over time. Like we have decided to do. So I would request that we update the May forecast. We don't just adopt that last
We
one.
can't update the May forecast, but if you request the May forecast was already due, and we didn't have that information when we were doing the May forecast as to positions being hired at that time. So that's why it was in the total textbook adoptions, because we didn't have to split it out. So I can't update the May forecast, but I can update the October forecast to reflect that.
Right, so to clarify, what we're looking at right now is 2.4 million was budgeted, $600,000 a year. How that number was created, we don't know, but it's what we've worked with. So we're within the 2.4 million in terms of the budget. So it's not something that's newly allocated. We knew this was going to be something, and we're researching, we're doing the homework to make sure this is what we need. Plus, we haven't even got the textbook adoption approved yet.
And I mean, the difference between the object lines from the October forecast and the May forecast, it was $2 million off in the salaries line and $1.7 million off in the benefits line. So this is a very small change that will be made.
This is a real issue here, if this is going to reduce our bottom line balance, and that's really the question. And the answer, what I'm hearing anyway, is that it is not because of the textbook. We're saving money on textbooks, et cetera. This money is being shifted to a position. So the bottom line is that our carryover is not going to be impacted by this decision.
Correct. The 2.4 million that was allotted is what we can follow. We have not gone beyond that, and we're not reducing that.
Yeah, that would not be my understanding, because the personnel items will carry on past the forecast. Now, in the window that we're looking at, I think that Dr. Mullins is 100% correct. We would not see a change in the window we're looking at. Looking out beyond that window, we will have a continuing personnel expense, whereas we may not have any.
But beyond that window, we don't have any salary increases in the 5-year forecast anyway, so all of them change. I mean, some things, so. All we can look at is these 5 years.
Just
Any other discussion?
Just one more question, just one clarification. 2011, when I came to the board and started talking about five-year forecasts, board member Miller, board member Cruzy, board member Coles, and made a comment about making adjustments to the forecast. One of the comments that they said then was that it's kind of a living, breathing document. I don't know if that's changed today, but that's the thing that, as it relates to the requirements to submit to the State Department of Education is twice a year. But to the extent that what was said to us, what I said to me in 2012, is that you can go back to the office tomorrow, make an adjustment if necessary. It doesn't have to necessarily be updated to OEE, but if there's a reflection change you're thinking about making, that would be something you can probably do.
Yeah, it'll go into the file to note it, but honestly, it won't hardly affect anything with the amount of money we're looking at. But I can have it tagged in the system so that when it's the next time for the forecast to come over, it'll automatically start adjusting those line items.
Okay.
In the forecast software.
Just going by the treasurer's comments, that's a living you can read. That's all. I'm sorry, just trying to get clarification today. No worries, thank you very much.
Roll call.
Anderson?
Yes.
Malone?
Yes.
Petroni?
Yes.
Regano?
Yes.
Stuckey?
Yes. Motion passes. Item 4.1, Mr. Cannell.
Gentlemen, recommend approval of the asphalt contract for Westside paving and excavation for this complex up here.
Motion.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Anderson?
Yes.
Malone?
Yes.
Petroni?
Yes.
Regano?
Yes.
Stuckey?
Yes. Motion passes. Item 4.2.
Recommend approval of the roof replacement at Clear Creek Elementary for age circle.
Motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Question. Just a quick question.
Oh, good.
Sorry, just a quick question. Are we buying materials from Trump Code Roofing?
No, this is, this age, Virgil is doing this, and full spec was a Duralast roof.
Roll call.
Anderson.
Yes.
Malone.
Yes.
Attorney.
Yes.
Regano.
Yes.
Stuckey.
Yes.
Motion passes. Item 4.3.
Gentlemen, recommendation for approval to, for resolution declaring an urgent case of urgent necessity for the purchase of the replacement chiller at Dallas Elementary. We've got to get that ordered so we get it put in before the start of the school year.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions?
How old was Dennis Elementary?
Dennis Elementary was opened in 2006, so the chiller's 8 years old.
Is that
last?
Typical for a chiller I was looking at?
No, it should be 20, 30 years. The same type of chiller, the same chiller was at 5 Points and it froze and broke in 2010 and it was replaced back then. So that one was only 4 years old at the time.
So are these systems similar to your home warranty systems, or they come with some sort of manufacturing warranty?
They come with a 12-month warranty. That's it. There's nothing else that's covered.
So I know we'll be talking about 34-year useful life. I think that was reflected by specialists on the chiller, but yet we're at 8 years.
Correct.
So how does one reconcile that an expert says the chillers last 20, 30 years when we got 2?
Well, I don't know exactly why, but because the chiller did the same thing at both 5 Points and Dennis, there has to be something that occurred with the production of this chiller. The replacement chiller we're putting in is slightly different, so my assumption is it's not supposed to happen the same thing. Plus, we're putting in a high efficiency unit, so we'll save a little bit more money on energy also. I mean, we've got, you know, the chillers that, the one we placed at Clear Creek in the fall, that when it died back in August, that was 17 years old. The chillers at Jonathan Wright Building and SI, they're 1997 chillers. So they should last 20 years. But there was something that's, I don't know if it's wrong with them or whatever. Trane doesn't claim there's an issue with them. For both of them to do the same thing in a short amount of time, there has to be something from that type of manufacturer when they did that. But they've changed that, the way that's done now.
Roll call.
Anderson.
Yes.
Malone.
Yes.
Attorney.
Yes.
Regano.
Yes.
Stuckey.
Yes.
Motion passes. Item 4.4.
Recommendation for approval of a 3-year contract for technology services with 4 days.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Questions?
Well, besides the tumultuous debate, don't ask questions, which I hope in the future we can find a way to avoid. I guess my only real concern, generally speaking, with this, besides it appears that cost, is the extra cost of this proposal. I read all your recommendations and everything else, so I understand your opinions. And I understand that your concerns with companies who are big, small, or indifferent. We are talking about computers, networks, Wi-Fi's. Whether it's a school or a government building, to me, my knowledge of that technology for a high-level energy specialist who's a technician doesn't really matter. It's a score, not just from my personal opinion, so we have a different opinion there. But I also am concerned when the previous meeting, and again, some very spirited conversations about saving $6,000 for other things, that we should be very cognizant that if there's an alternative, that perhaps, despite all the recommendations, I understand that, in my opinion, we should be going and saving the resources to affect your direction that you'd like to go. So I will be voting no on this contract, not because I don't like the direction. I'd like the minutes to reflect my reasons specifically for voting no, because I'm not against the technology outsourcing, or do I have anything specific against this company or any of your companies or the process. So thank you for the work you put into this. I'm just telling you that my concerns are based on very big concerns on a small number of savings. And regardless of whether we can save money, this is one area that there are options. So that's just my
Yeah, I'd like to address a couple of points, I guess, on this. One, I've shared this in our meetings and so forth. I do have a concern about the concept about outsourcing. Share that, I feel that whether it's outsourcing technology or some other service that our district offers, we lose control to some degree on that. I think, and again, I'm not an expert in this area, I have to defer to those who are, that it would be a lot easier to control costs and to some degree services if we had the program in-house. I did ask at the last meeting, I believe it was, or perhaps in some emails, if we find out that in the end the services that are projected are not enough to meet our needs, is there additional cost? And quite possibly could be. That's a concern. This company has given its best shot, its best interest, the best estimate in terms of what our district is going to need. What my concern is if they're off, we may end up paying the price. I think that in a scenario where if we have this service in-house, it's easier to control those costs. It's easier to make adjustments. And again, a big concern I do have is that I hope this is not a trend where we are starting to outsource various services that our district does offer. So again, overall, given our situation, right now we're short on individuals in this area, and I do feel that the best thing to do is to support this.
Mr. President, if I may. Dr. Muller, your point's understood. It's not our intent to outsource anything else. Our classified contract doesn't allow us to outsource for 4 years. We have outsourced through our educational service center. Actually, a lot less this year than we did last. Tammy's going to talk about it. We may bring back a part-time position from there. But other than that, this is an individual case basis in terms of outsourcing for technology, looking at the trends. And really, it's not so much for the cost savings, it's for the expertise that you get when you outsource in comparison to if we tried to hire in-house people with that level of expertise, we would see a significant increase in personnel. It would cost us to find some people at that level. So, for example, one of our employees left for double the salary plus a bonus. So, I mean, we're living it, but as far as outsourcing, that's not our intent at all.
Mr. President, I think I know the employee you're referring to. He's a good guy. I don't know if it's important for the public to be always hearing this will be the third or fourth time I've heard about this compensation. It's just my personal opinion that if we can maybe, let's keep the business of the business separate with the business and any other personal things in this regards. Because he's a good guy. I don't know if the public needs to know what he's making. Now, if he's hiring people that are qualified, his company with more people, then I think that should be his directive to go ahead and advertise those positions. But I think we just kind of let him go and do his thing. Be really appreciative. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
Yeah. I guess my apologies. I've been under the weather this week, so I have not given this. It's taken longer to give it my normal level of attention. But there's a clause in the contract on solicitation of personnel. And in these outsourcing agreements, of course, the technology company does not want us turning and hiring their folks after they recruit, train, etc. However, I think there's also reciprocal concern, and that's not expressed in the contract. That solicitation of personnel is one-sided. We can't do anything that would take one of their people away from them, and if we do, we got to pay them a year's salary. Well, I think there ought to be reciprocal language in here that they can't do anything to take away one of our folks without paying a year's salary. I think that ought to be 100% reciprocal in there. And I would propose that we amend the contract accordingly before we approve it. But I agree with Dr. Blunt too. I used to work for a company that did exactly this type of outsourcing. And one of the one of the problems is when you outsource all of your IT, which is in fact what we're doing, you become very dependent on this company. And very much so. And if we're doing electronic textbooks, if that technology doesn't run, we'll be in business. So I hope that there's very strong incentives in here for them to provide good service. That's what I'm sure you're concerned about. So, Mr. President, I would suggest that we amend section 4.4 of the contract to include reciprocal language that the service provider not be allowed to recruit Springboro schools employees with the same requirements and same repercussions as so stated for us hiring their employees.
Yeah, they both make very good points too. Again, besides cost, there's this 3-year term factor on. I don't know if that is something of an exploration as well that to be considered. I'm not suggesting I would vote for this, but perhaps if there were a shorter time frame as it relates to figuring out this works, and then make a decision to come back and renew versus to lock in. Because I don't know, I didn't pay as much attention to cancellation as if we fail these. I don't know what happens.
Mr. Fennell, can you address the cancellation provision?
Right, we have 2 cancellation provisions within the contract. The first one is if there is a deficiency that they are told about, they have 15 days to correct it. If they don't, we can cancel the contract. Also, there's the standard annual appropriations. So if the school district has significant financial issues and cannot appropriate the money for this contract, it's declared null and void.
Any other discussion?
I would ask if there's a second closed amendment.
Well, if we're going to amend this, we'll have to pull this off and discuss it in the company. We can't just amend on this assumption they're going to agree.
You could take the amended version to them and say this is what the board agreed to, and you agree. And obviously, if they could choose not to agree, I can't imagine that they would have a problem with purely symmetrical language to what they would put on us. I can't imagine that they would have a problem with that, but that's all I'm asking for.
So seeing out in the audience that that's not a problem.
No, absolutely not. I agree with that.
So,
John is the CEO for it.
so we'll let's vote on the amendment. Well, all right, we can. I'd rather vote on the amendment. So, any other discussion on the amendment? We'll vote on the amendment.
I think we still need a second, Mr. President.
Please.
I think we still need a second on the amendment.
Do we have a second? Yes, we have a second, Mr. Pacelli. Mr. O'Brien. So we'll vote on the amendment.
Anderson?
Yes.
Malone?
Yes.
Attorney?
Yes.
Regano?
Yes.
Stuckey?
Yes.
No one stand. Now we'll vote on the motion. Roll call.
Anderson?
Yes.
Malone?
Yes.
Attorney?
No on the contract.
Stuckey?
Yes.
Regano?
No.
Motion passes. And we'll move to item 4.5.
Number 4.5, recommendation to approve a resolution declaring the case for the necessity to implement an energy conservation program.
Your motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Again, asked a lot of questions today. Apologize for this. Sure, final presentation. I tried looking at the data. How is this going to cost $900,000 a year, every 5 years. Is that the information I was presented?
It's a $5 million project that'll be repaid over 20 years.
So
at the most.
we're-
It could, if we save more money and energy, it'll be less. The initial projections show that it could be as little as 14 years or as many as 20, depending on our actual energy savings.
So we're going to go out and bond finance for 20 years.
Correct.
For things that are last 5 or 8 years.
Hopefully not. Hopefully the things that we're doing are not 5-year fixed.
No, I'm just looking at useful lives and paybacks of 5 years. I'm just looking at some of these relationships.
Right.
Is this guaranteed savings? How are we monitoring that we're saving?
We'll be monitoring that every year as we go along to make sure that we're receiving those savings on the energy costs. We're going to develop a baseline, and then on an annual basis, I'll be working with the company to ensure that that's met.
Are they guaranteeing the
Yeah.
savings? There's a note here that Mr. Smith is working on this project.
Yeah.
There was a budget committee member appointed by someone, as you were talking through this. What's Mr. Smith's role in this?
He's the lead. He's taking the lead on it.
Lead for who?
The weatherproofing technology incorporated.
Trumco?
Well, that's the, yes. The weatherproofing technology incorporated is the contracting arm of Trumco.
So Trumco has recently been notified of a lawsuit. Should we care about that lawsuit? If we make any decisions on this, do we have a concern that we had a person sitting in the budget committee where this was vetted, proposed, and looks like it could be some sort of conflict, perhaps? Just asking the question.
No, I'll answer part of it. As far as conflict, no, I do not see this as a conflict. Mr. Smith is a volunteer within our community who has been on various committees over the years. He had the opportunity to bid, as did other individuals, and his bid was determined to be the most appropriate. So I don't see that there's anything at all wrong with the fact that we have a person within our community who has a vested interest in our community that has submitted this bid. As far as any lawsuit, unless I get the idea that's almost a trial balloon. It's been thrown out there. Is there a basis? You're asking the question, is there a basis for us being concerned? I've turned that around. Is there, in your opinion, does this have merit? Is anyone can file anything? And I don't want to see someone's reputation or a company's reputation impugned because someone decided to file a lawsuit. Am I going to jump on the bandwagon and say, yes, we're going to go ahead and add to this? No, I'm not going to.
There was a government action. It was the government that jumped on the bandwagon for a $60 million settlement. So it wasn't just anybody filing a lawsuit.
Well, all this is coming up today. This process has been in place for weeks. And for us to be given this information 2 or 3 hours before the board meeting, that does not carry much weight with me, I'll be honest with you.
Well, I can't help it, but I was doing due diligence on the company and uncovered this. It was not provided to me by anyone for any reason other than this is out there. So for me, it raises a concern. The sole sourcing raises a concern. The concept, generally speaking, I don't like adding. My next question, is this going to be added to our debt schedule or just separate of our debt schedule? We have $123 million of debt. We're going to add another $5 million approximately. Will that be reflected on our go-forward debt schedule?
It will be added to the debt schedule. However, the savings that are realized from the energy projects that they do is what pays for the debt, and financing is structured to ensure that. And since the guaranteed savings are there, there will be no out-of-pocket cost to our 5-year. If anything, it will save money in our 5-year because we have those close to our capital needs monies that we've set aside in the 5-year. A lot of this will come out because of this, so it'll actually be good for the 5-year.
So for the record, from my perspective, I'm concerned about the findings of the federal government in class action settlement with Trumco, who is the selected provider. I've been accused for lesser items for doing nothing. relates to conflicts. This is a $5 million project. I greatly appreciate volunteers in the community, but there seems to be, in my mind, sitting in the room, having the discussions, gives an impossible advantage in my mind, being the only vendor sitting in the room while discussions were going on to replace the budget meetings. I was there when the presentation was brought forward, so I know that this was brought up in the Budget Finance Committee. That's all I'm saying. This is my perspective. I don't need to debate it or argue it. Please, I just like to put my perspective on the record. So the 3 points that I'm voting no on, number one, because I'm concerned on this, the company's reputation. And I apologize that I'm coming to you so soon, but I do try to do some due diligence and try to read it. My schedule's been a little rough, so it's my fault for not getting this out weeks early.
Well, if I may, Mr. President, Mr. Smith, not only has his kids gone here, he's been a great supporter of the district. In addition, he's done work for the district before. We sat through all 5 presentations. He's $300,000 or $400,000 cheaper than the other companies, and he came with specific facts about this. I mean, 2 contracts that we've sat through today. I'll leave it at that. I shared it on email, my thoughts on people doing business with people we're doing contracts with. But nonetheless, I think this whole discussion is portraying a negative perspective when, to my understanding, in the last policy meeting, Mr. Argano mentioned we should be supporting local businesses. So, I mean, we say that, and now we are, plus we're saving money, and we have a person who knows the district well, is able to show us things that we needed to save in other areas because of his awareness of the district. I guess I'm missing the whole picture here.
Well, Mr. President, since my name was mentioned, I guess I gotta come out and clear the record again. If you recall last meeting, we had a copier discussion. We had representatives from RICO here, and one of them was a local sales rep. And I did make the comment that we should support local businesses. And I would suggest that the businesses incorporated in Springboro that they do deserve special deference. I don't know that at least we have been provided the information about what this particular business is incorporated in Springboro. I don't recognize the name. But moving on from that, the resolution that's been placed before us, and I guess I don't know if we saw the resolution before, but at least I didn't hear this particular point emphasized. It asks for the authority for the board president and the treasurer to enter into no bid contracts for up to $5 million. No competitive bids, and a total of $5 million of purchases. Some of the projects that were identified, lighting retrofits, building automation upgrades, demand control ventilations, roofs at Clear Creek, which we already approved this evening, roof at Springboro Intermediate, chiller at Dennis, which we approved just moments ago, chiller at Springboro Intermediate, and several others on the list. I mean, a lot of these are not energy projects per se because we didn't identify any payback for those. They're just major repairs, replacements, refurbishments that we included into this program. And there's no expected, at least according to the report, there's no expected payback for those. And so in effect, what we're doing is we're taking items that were in our capital improvements plan, which is maybe a little bit of a misnomer because it was really major repairs and replacements plan. We're taking those and we're amortizing those. And we're basically increasing our debt burden, which is already, I think, relatively high at $120 million. And so, my personal opinion is I think a number of these programs should be reprogrammed into our capital improvements program. They may have to be metered out at a slower pace than what we might be able to do if we borrow money. But I'm really not all that keen on increasing our already high debt burden.
I'm going to clarify what you're saying. It doesn't go against our, like it won't add our $123 million debt. It won't show that we have now, $127 million worth of debt. It's not going to go against our debt schedule. It's just that it's like a wash, basically. I mean, it will actually be to the good, but we have to pay these, you know, for the conservation projects, we'll have to pay for those through the savings, so it's not debt. It's just, you know, I went through this at Loveland, and you set up a separate fund, and you put the money in there, the financing in there, and then you pay all of the projects through that payment. It's not, it won't go against our debt schedule, so maybe I said that wrong. It's not.
We're borrowing money to pay for it, whereas in our capital plan, we weren't borrowing money to pay for it. And
The savings pay for the projects, though.
Well, they would pay for the project no matter where we got it from, wouldn't it? I mean, if we're replacing lights and we save $816,000 in
But we
6
can't
years.
afford to do those projects with
Well,
unless we
that's
do
my
this
point.
finance.
That's my
So-
point, is that we had a capital improvements plan that laid out these projects.
Not
And-
these projects.
Not these
The capital needs plan had a couple items in it.
Excuse me, Mr. President, I'd like to continue my thoughts. I don't want to be interrupted. My point is that we have a plan that address these things. Now, maybe the plan didn't address the right things. I'm perfectly fine with substituting things that we need to do in the plan as we need. My reservation is borrowing the money to do it. Because I think that unless there's something that's extraordinarily urgent, I think $120 million of borrowing is enough. The other reservation I have, which I mentioned, is this non-competitive bids. No competing on this type of projects that I described. I don't know how we assure that on a roof replacement that we're going to get at a fair price unless we go out and get competitive bids. So I have a real problem. So I understand that if you want to get something going this year, there is some urgency to do that because summer is upon us. And so for projects that we had to do here now or never, I guess I could appreciate that. But for some of these things, authorizing a resolution that says no competition you know, $5 million, I'm not able to swallow that one.
There will be bid processes right there. Some of these, we've already gotten 3 bids. That's part of the partnership with Trimco. That's, when you work with a business like this, they're able to get those costs at a much more efficient price than we are. As far as the efficiencies taking place, when we change that chiller, that is a major savings for us. The roof, part of our problems, if you think about your house, you have the overhangs. When those aren't insulated properly, your heat goes right out those areas. So when we put these new roofs on and we cap those in, I forget what they call them. There's some terminology for it. But nonetheless, when they're capped, it creates energy efficient buildings, which is a tremendous savings for us. That's why when you saw $816,000 over 6 years, that's a huge savings. We're not going to pay near that for the product. So we're investing money. This is business. We're investing money to save money in the process. It just makes good sense.
Mr. Petrie, I'm not arguing that the projects make sense. I'm arguing that we can't guarantee a good price if we don't get competitive bids. I'm arguing that we don't need debt to do it. If we're going to save $816, let's program it into a capital improvements plan where we don't have to pay the cost of the debt. I guess that's another question is how much are we paying in debt and how much in savings does that So, you know, I don't know if that's figured into the
we don't have the money to be able to go out and do these things with our own money. Otherwise, we would drive down our balance, cash balance, so low to be able to invest money in these. We don't have that money on hand to do that. I wouldn't consider any business would drive their business down that way. The capital and having that free capital that people can go out and get these loans to further advance their buildings, the way business is done. That's the key. Most builders who are in the building industry right now, their lifelink is that capital to be able to go out and get that money to reinvest in their business to grow. They don't use cash in their bank to do that unless they're extremely wealthy.
Mr. Trump, do recall how much, Mr. Attorney, you recall how much money we had in the capital improvements plan in the previous forecast?
The company, Steve Hammond and Paul, was paid $63,000 to create a capital improvements plan and budget in 2012. That plan laid out roughly $5.6 million, I believe. And in the 5-year forecast, there was funded approximately $3.7 million through 2017. As Mr. Camiller's said, so.
It was 6.5.
And those, the number was between 5 point something and 6 point something. There was a number of millions of dollars in aggregate, which I do not recall if these chillers were itemized, but they might have been out there for a picture, and some of these other items might have been there. But the plan was skinny back because, and the direction of that came from the business managers for the most part. Some may be differently, but with items on the paper through that planning process. And it was skinny back because we didn't have the cash capital. We felt that we would try to manage through using capital, which is good. I think this was brought up in 2012, and we lost a treasurer at the time. I don't recall Mr. Anderson was brought about the program at the time, and that very good into conversation with some stabilized activity with treasurers.
So, thank you. My point is that we had been able to set aside major dollars for repairs and replacements, and we didn't have to do it all in there. Probably some of these projects weren't in there. It may require some reshuffling. Thank you.
Roll call?
Anderson?
Yes.
Malone?
Yes.
Attorney?
No.
Regano?
No.
Stuckey?
Yes.
Motion passes. Move on to board member reports, comments, or questions. Mr. Stuckey, do you have any?
Not tonight, thank you.
Mr. Attorney?
No, sir.
Mr. Regano?
Oh, of course I do. What is that? Future announcement, I guess I'll just call you. Been trying to put together some kind of a community session on the board. Would like to get the advocates here and the non-advocates to have a discussion. Unfortunately, the non-advocates are very busy, and what I hope we might be able to do on Friday or on Thursday, we're not going to be able to do. So I have called 5 points to let them know that we will be there. But I still hope to do that we might do that at some point in the future. I didn't know we discussed that in Springboro, so we said we'll think about it. I think it's important. This affects every child in the school district. Every parent should know pros and cons of Common Core. And that's the goal of this. So I hope that we will continue to think about it, because I think it's crucially important. It's also the role of the Board of Education to communicate with the community and to inform them and have them inform us. So that's the purpose of what I'd like to do. Certainly, I'm not trying to exclude anybody from the discussion or participation whatsoever. This is comparison line here. But in the Springboro e-News, there was a note sent out that said that there's some high school e-books out there to review. And actually, it's a little bit broader than high school, because there's some 6th grade materials out there, some junior high math, and so on. So I guess I would like clear as to whether that invitation was broader than just high school parents and other people who might, obviously anybody who's interested in looking at those would be free to look at them. But the notice was, zeroing in on high school. And so I was curious as to whether or not we were really looking for feedback from junior high parents, since we had 6th grade and 7th, 8th grade math and stuff in there. at sixth grade English language arts in there. So it wasn't just high school that we had links and sign-on information for. Can you clarify for us
Well,
what the objective
I'll
was?
speak about. There was no intent on trying to, and please stop me if I'm kind of going down the wrong path on this, but there's no intent on presenting that information in such a way that it's one or the other. The idea is to have opportunities to review the materials that are at what's going to be proposed this evening, which is the math 6 through 12 and ELA 6 through 12. And so to say that it's really, it was basically an opportunity for anyone within the community, or anyone for that matter, that would like to review the materials that we have spent a lot of time and energy to look at ourselves, not only as a staff, but as teachers and parents, and also opportunities to look at the hardback. We had that opportunity as well. So the electronic version, while it being new, obviously that is out there now on our website. And the intent is just for us to have the opportunity to peruse through that and to look at it from a critical sense, if you will. And so the intent is not to kind of steer in one direction or the other. It's to basically put the information out 6 through 12 for those two areas.
I guess my question really is, should only high school parents be paying attention to this? Because the E-News statement and really focused, I mean, it was a call to action that seemed like for high school folks, as opposed to junior high and junior high folks.
Well, and partly because the timing of when basically the 6 through 8 had opportunities over time to look at it, and in the high school was a little bit later. So the timing of that is aligned with when things were presented as a whole. So, the intent again is to allow anyone to take a look, at any one of the grade levels, for that matter.
Okay. I guess the thing that, let me just suggest, can we resend that announcement and maybe break up the piece that's relevant to high school and the piece that's relevant to junior high? Because when I looked at the note, my mindset was, okay, I need to be looking at this as though I was a high school parent. But then I saw the junior high info, and I wasn't sure if I was a high school parent, should I be looking at 6th grade ELA? What's the purpose of me looking at that if I'm in high school? Or, you know what I mean? It was just a little bit confusing. Were you expecting high school parents to look at 6th grade ELA as, I don't know, an example of what high school ELA would be like?
Well, and not that, again, the intention is for anyone to look at any grade level that they so choose and I think I get what you're saying, is to kind of separate it out so that folks aren't having to peruse through all of this if they're just looking at 6th grade. But there is, if you're looking at 6th grade material, I would also want to look at what's to come.
Okay.
So I think there is.
I'm fine either way. My only point, maybe I'm just going about it in a very circuitous way, is that the write-up called attention of high school parents and not really anybody else. Maybe it should be more general and call attention to everybody. And that would address, I think, the issue. I did get a chance to get started reviewing some of these things. I started with the 6th grade ELA. I'm not sure why, since I just said it was a call to attention for high school folks. But anyway, that was like the first one on the list. Of course, this is a Common Core 6th grade piece. I just make an observation for what it's worth for people in the community. And I've not gotten past unit 1 of 5 units. But I did look at the contents. The contents, unit 1 is titled, Is Conflict Always Bad? Unit 2, What is Important to Know? Unit 3, Do we need words to communicate well? Unit 4, how do we decide who we are? That'd be an interesting unit. I'm anxious to get that. Unit 5, how much do our communities shape us? And I guess my first observation to folks in the community is those are kind of interesting topics for English language arts. It's kind of like, let's include a little social engineering. So I went and I looked at one of my, admittedly, my favorite English language arts curriculums, which is core knowledge curriculum, which is not to be confused with Common Core, entirely separate, developed years ago. And I looked at the 6th grade curriculum put out by Core Knowledge. And they deal with stories. The Iliad and the Odyssey by Homer, The Prince and the Pauper by Mark Twain, Julius Caesar, William Shakespeare, a number of classical mythology stories, poetry, All the World's a Stage, Apostrophe to the Ocean by Byron, some Wadsworth, some Kipling, some Emily Dickinson, Longfellow, Robert Frost, Emily Dickinson again. So those are the types of materials, just in contrast, that I had gone through. Now, I'm not saying it's good, bad, or different. I'm just letting people know what I have found out at this point. In Unit 1, what we had so far is a number of little short stories in the Common Core book. So that's where I'm at with my review board, and I'll keep you posted.
No.
Let's move on to public announcements. Public announcements.
Graduation.
Graduation.
Number 7.
What time should we show up?
At least an hour before. 4 o'clock. 5 should be.
I was social studies, but that's 2.
5 o'clock. Traffic will be kind of tight there.
Okay, well, we're on the future considerations. No. Convene for work session. We'll take a 5-minute break.
Good, thank you.
And we'll be back in session. 8.1. Committee reports.
Ms. Benson, do you have anything you'd like to talk about for the policy meeting? Apologize, I wasn't there, my wife had surgery.
Yes, we went through about 10 updates from Neola due to state and federal regulations. Mr. Dono was not able to be present, so he sent some information. We spoke on that, we looked at the policies. We are not ready to bring anything forward because we need to present those to you. Our web. Karen DeRosa is working on the web page policy. We still are looking for a few facts from the attorney to get that all congruent with what we need to do to send forward. And I believe Mr. Cannell's purchasing agreement is ready for you to take a look at also. So the policies that we discussed have not gone to first reading yet. They will not be ready for next week due to, we have about 900 human resource items to get this before vacation. So those policies will come back for first reading, I believe, at the July meeting.
Budget finance, we haven't met, but we do plan. We're working on some meetings now. We're gathering the information. The compensation committee, we did meet, and we meeting next Thursday at SCA is defining our contract. We're going to research different ways of compensation and also performance-based pay. We're looking at possible options out there. So we are going to meet for the second time next Thursday. SBA is bringing some research. We're going to be bringing some research. We also had our last student engagement committee, which I tell you what, we have 35 high school kids who come faithfully to this student engagement meeting. We discussed the program of studies, their thoughts on that, the dress code, which I had no idea I was so outdated when it comes to fashion. We have discussed activities they would like to see at the high school, some that we've added that they like, but other options as well. It's just been a really, I've enjoyed it. We have some outstanding kids here in our schools. They are so professional, and they're able to deliver themselves in such a professional, diplomatic manner. It is absolute joy. I know Dr. Malone is on that committee as well, and it is just, it's a lot of fun. It really is. Other than that, Curriculum Council, you have met.
Yeah, we met twice, and that committee in particular, we just kind of gave an overview of what's taken place throughout the entire year and looking at some of the options for high school students. But each department in curriculum presented at the first meeting and shared out kind of what's been taking place over the course of this school year. And then next year, kind of proposing, there's going to be obviously some new things that we want to bring into that committee, and a lot of it deals with specifically things related to curriculum and adoptions and policies and things like that. So we really want to get to kind of down to levels where we can make some significant impact with a group of teachers and staff members and community members, so we can make some quality decisions.
Okay, thank you. Item 8.2, Mrs. Cook.
Good evening, board members. I would respectfully request approval on the following items: junior high school fees for next school year, as well as high school fees for next year.
She's presenting tonight, and we'll go for approval on June 10th.
Yeah, we'll just have discussion.
Discussion.
Are there any questions I can answer for you with regards to junior high and high school fees tonight?
So in other words, she's ready for you to vote.
Just one question.
Yes, sir.
Looks good. Is there, I hope I didn't miss the summary, that these are higher, lower, the same as previous year? I probably did miss it, so I apologize if I did.
No apologies necessary. Overall, our fees are lower within both buildings. And I'm going to say lower in that they even out to being overall lower. There are a couple items with regards to publisher pricing that you'll see that have gone up slightly. Then those costs are out of our hands. However, the overall fees have gone down. You will not see progress book on either one of these, which is similar to what you saw with the elementaries, as well as the paper fees are off. And those are fees that affected families 7 through 12 to the tune of around $19 in total. I'm sorry, around $9 in total.
So I assume we'll do an announcement of the adoption reduction of fees. Is that important? It feels important to me.
I feel like it's important.
Yeah,
I appreciate you bringing it up, yes.
Well, what we don't know right now is with the ebooks, there's so much blended in there. I see potential that it could save parents money on school fees, but as of now, we just kept it constant. We better safe than sorry. So as we get into these, there may be the potential to really save parents money in terms of what they've been paying with work books and things like that.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions? No, we'll move on to 8.3.
Proposed adoptions.
All right. First of all, I want to give a special thanks out to all of our teacher staff, the curriculum department as a whole, and parents, and Karen DeRosa. Karen has helped tremendously in supporting communication and doing that with some urgency, as well as sitting down with us and putting information together that makes sense, and so that we can deliver that to our public. We have had several meetings related to kind of open forums, if you will, to allow parents to come in, and what we really need to do is look at all options that will allow folks to evaluate and look at materials as we request these adoptions over time. But at this moment in time, we have gone through the process of evaluating materials, and each one of the documents that are included within the board docs are the documents that have been worked through by administration as well as teachers, and we have listed all the teachers, what companies we have looked at, which ones we have evaluated to look at as far as materials, to narrow that scope to the ones specifically that we would like to recommend, and we're pushing that forward to you tonight. The areas that we are looking at obviously are math 6 through 12, ELA 6 through 12, international language, which quite frankly, what was the date on the last time that was?
1994 was the earliest date.
1994, and I tell you, the excitement from those folks was unbelievable as far as the opportunity to get new materials and access electronically some materials as well. AP Physics B and AP Psychology. I've also submitted to you our timeline and all the things that we have done to look at materials over time, and then the survey from our public. And I take that survey very, very much to heart, and looking at and trying to synthesize exactly where we need to work in regards to the transition of this opportunity in the use of ebooks. And I think one of the things I guess I want to say before I officially ask for your thoughts with this particular proposal is that it is a time of change. We are going through some transitions with that. We have teachers that have really jumped on board. They've asked quality questions. They're actually evaluating materials and looking at how ebooks can be embedded into their classroom in such a way that the engagement, the high engagement by students is going to be beneficial for not only achievement, but also day-to-day learning and having the ability 24/7 to have access to the materials. I think what I want to be very clear on is the fact that we have looked at these adoptions in the way at which we will continue with print as well as electronically. And I guess I really want that to be emphasized because, a lot of what I've seen in the document as far as the responses, there's some criticism, and I appreciate that. There's some changes that are making their way into Springboro with this concept. But I also want to say, when we say blended learning, the teachers have the ability to embed in technology when they find it to be appropriate and when they find it to be necessary to meet those expectations and those learning targets within the classroom. And that comes with the communication that we would like to provide for you on an ongoing basis, because this is going to continue as far as our research and what's going to be best for our students in the classroom. There are the challenges of those that don't have the technology, and it could be down to one person or one student, one family. And we want to make sure that we have the technology available to them and/or the book that is available to them to be able to take home if they so choose. And that can be checked out with the teacher. So we're trying to cover all our bases in the best way that we possibly can so that we can deliver instruction in the 21st century. And so these particular materials that we're proposing to you this evening are for the courses that we have, again, presented in these documents, as well as our timeline, as well as our survey, and our communication out to the public. So at this time, I'd like to entertain any questions that you may have.
I got two maybe, I think. It looks like there's a lot of engagement by folks when I see names of teachers, just so I can understand the process. So for instance, on this international language, I'm not picking any book out, it says Ms. Roberts, Vincent, Poe, those are all people who reviewed these. In this particular case, it looks like it was a Pearson and Vista. Of course, Pearson has 12 different names by its, it's always the other name that's listed. So Pearson seems to be having a bunch of companies they bought. Is that the reason for the different names? Right. So basically, but I guess what's striking to me, and I'm looking at your grading scale, and I don't know if this is a question going back to why we want something that would be average or below average, and how does one determine from the reviewer's notes, or at least the compilation, that it's really a good book when I see more. So the grading scale was a plus, which is way above average, a plus, an okay, which I guess means okay, give some definitions, and a minus. And I don't know if it's maybe a bias or unbiased, or maybe, but it seems consistent that there's more okays. There's not really anything knocking them out of the park in these books. And there's really nothing that's saying whether it's Pearson or the other guy. And I'm not getting a lot of differences. I mean, I can see a few more negatives maybe on one versus the other. But how are you going to decide? I mean, to me, it looks like maybe you're going to go with Pearson on every one of these purchases, but I don't know why. I guess I wouldn't know why.
Well, I could be wrong on this, but I think I did send to all of you the evaluation rubric, which is another layer that they took a look at as far as the evaluation of the math and language arts. So there's that rubric that was used, that was then used at this point to produce these documents that are the documents that the teachers have then put together and presenting to you this evening. So that other layer, you don't have that document, but I know that I'm almost positive that I have sent those to you, which is a rubric that was used.
Yeah, I mean, okay, I don't remember. It's probably me, so again, I'm going to apologize for a little bit slow these days, but I guess still I'm just trying to, so we've got one book that's got 10 pluses, 5 okays, and a negative. We've got the other book that's got 9 pluses, 10 okays, and a negative. What makes one over the other get selected? It's that rubric, is what you're saying, but I don't see it on this book. It's going to make that commentary hit the left one versus the right one? That's correct, because that rubric is going to get down to the level of the complexity of materials, the design of the text and the close read and the materials that are going to be used from within that adoption. So, it's not just it's not as simple as a plus or minus, if you will, because that grading scale is while it appears to be not so good or good, we want those materials to be excellent. So I think the choices of the books that we do want to look at, and that aligned with this adoption, is going to be helpful in us in the classroom. So it does get to that layer of the evaluation process, which again falls back to that rubric, which I'll be happy to resend that for you. Yeah, the only other comment I want to make, and I'm at 5,000 foot on your presentation, Jim, as it relates to the core knowledge curriculum versus this curriculum that we're looking at. And again, I'm not smart enough, so what I don't know is what I don't know. But it seems like, just in that brief moment there, the depth within the core knowledge on literature and writers may be more pronounced and defined in 6th grade than the book that we're potentially looking at. Would that be was that your assessment? You came out of that too? And I mean, I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but I'm just trying to get my arms around.
Well, given that I've reviewed 85% of what Mrs. Springboro has provided us, I'm not sure that it's appropriate to answer that. I did read that list because that's kind of, that's one of my frame of references. I mean, here's one of the curriculums that I like, and here's the level of rigor that's presenting. I guess I'm looking for similar level of rigor in materials that we've got. At least I would hope to achieve that.
Well, maybe it's a, my last question is the budget you have for this?
Correct.
So this is $687,197.
Yes.
Presuming this is part of the $1.9 million or the 1.9 plus 500,000 now, which is $2.4 million. This is the second tranche of purchases that we've had for textbooks now in the last 12 months. We had the first 500,000, which was
well, it was really
journeys,
not quite that much. I mean, it was
400,000, whatever.
Right.
Sorry, approximately 397,000.
So I like to think that I struggled with that. Math was complicated.
397,470.
Just to agree with her on this one.
Yeah, that one was. That was my savings.
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand the savings, but this is.
I get what you're saying, but it's like I'm trying to budget for.
She disagrees
these
with me
things.
too, on particular points.
I get it. I really do.
Right.
Yes.
Tammy, just a comment. I think what's also helpful is for individuals to make sure that they read the comments by the teachers and evaluators, because if they go into specifics as to, like refer to one book as being far superior in terms of technology available to work with the book, that's not going to be necessarily reflected in the pluses and minuses. So I think the narratives kind of fill in a lot of gaps too about why would we go with one book versus another.
Just one more comment. There was a point in 2011 in the high school program of studies where there was, when we talked about it in 2012, there was a reference to BC. There's an AB class in high school and there's a BC. Is it calculus? Or is it? And I guess the reason I'm bringing it up.
The calculus class, the college board offers two different levels of calculus, one being referred to as AB and the other being referred to as BC.
And is that part of what we're doing right here, bringing in the BC now? Or?
We are not yet.
Well, this B, the B.
Are you looking at the physics B? AP physics B?
No, I think it's math, and it's my memory by math. It was math. I apologize.
No, that is not reflected in here because that is not a course that we've adopted yet. I actually have a meeting with Mary Luce Friday over this on calculus BC, and as you know, the math curriculum has changed. Much of what students typically got in 8th grade is now in 7th. A lot of our typical algebra curriculum that students got as a standard 9th grade course, half of the old CP Algebra 1 is now found, those concepts are found in the Core 8 program. So our students are entering high school more prepared because more of the high school curriculum has been pushed to the lower levels. In so doing, we have abolished or we have ended offering algebra in 2 years. So in the past, we've offered an Algebra 1A and an Algebra 1B. You will no longer see that in the program of studies as of next year. Mrs. Luce, who is our department chair, and I have been working at coming up with a plan for our youngsters due to the change in the state's requirements of students needing 4 credits for math graduation when they used to need 3. So those students that struggle the most in math would take Algebra 1A, 1B, geometry, and they would be finished. Now the expectation is that all students will graduate with Algebra 2. So we're working on a plan whereby our students would enter 9th grade, take algebra, then geometry, and the possibility, which we have not brought to you yet until we have time to research, an Algebra 2A and an Algebra 2B. We are also looking at, that would be for our struggling students, we're also looking at for our more advanced mathematics students, the offering of combining pre-cal and the A portion of calculus AB. Are you following me on that so far? That would allow our students who condense the pre-cal and the calculus A portion of the AB to take calculus BC as a senior instead of our current offering of a year of pre-cal and a year of calculus AB.
So I'm glad to hear that, because the reason I bring it up, a recent Springboro grad who is now a college graduated from a university out west in California, and she told me at lunch maybe a year ago how she actually finally asked, do we have calculus BC yet? And it was ironic. I said, well, gee, I just happened to be paying attention, and we didn't have it yet for whatever reason, just having a conversation. I said, well, man, everybody I went to class with, they already had BC from all the California schools, and she was behind. generally speaking. Now, she graduated well, and no problem. I shouldn't say behind. I don't want to use that word. She was not. Well, whatever they do in California, it looks like we're heading in that direction. Not that I want to limit us after California.
Well, you know, shouldn't send me out there to see what's going on.
But I guess I'm glad to hear that we're finally moving in that direction. Because I know it was in the program in 2011, and now we're going to work. So.
Yes, and one thing I want to point out that is somewhat confusing to folks is students would not take AB, then take BC. So that B portion of the AB and the BC is an overlap. So that's why we're looking at a condensed, almost like a year and a half's worth of mathematics as a junior for our advanced students, whereby they would condense pre-cal and calculus A of the AB to be able to 15, 16. Thank you.
Ms. Springboro, how many of the texts that you are recommending are Common Core like?
Well, it's interesting that you say that because, quite frankly, all the companies are, or not all, but most companies are saying that they are lying. So, to be honest with you, we're not looking at the cover that says Common Core line. We're looking at all the features, looking at areas that we think are most critical to give us the depth. So, to say that we are going to adopt something because of Common Core or new learning standards, we would be all sitting, I think, for the most part, in our districts, adopting the same thing. For that matter, because they all have this Common Core alignment to it. And I don't think we don't look at it as that, with the notion that we're going to address this one target that happens to be Common Core. It happens to be the resources that we are going to use to meet standards that we are expected to meet at levels at which we want to teach here in Springboro. We can drive that. We can drive that train, if you will. So, I can honestly say that, yes, do some of these absolutely align with the Common Core? You know what? None of them fully align with the Common Core. And they'll be the first to tell you that there's gaps in these books, if you will.
Well, if you're a textbook maker and people are adopting Common Core, don't you aim at the top Common Core? Well, that's your target, even though you might not, hit an exact bullseye on every standard in Common Core, that's still your target, right? So I guess this is my general question. And there's a national debate about whether Common Core is as rigorous as ought to be, and I've talked about that before, but I guess my point is this, is if our texts are aimed towards the Common Core, but we decide, you mentioned Singapore math last meeting, we decide Singapore math would be a better standard for us, but now we have our books aimed at Common Core, and we then kind of shot ourselves in the foot with a major expense. I guess that's my concern on that point. The other question that I had is, which, it should be clear to everybody that Common Core is not my favorite thing, but one of the pieces of information that we have about some of these programs, our 6th graders, 7th graders, 8th graders actually use these this year, right? And so I guess what I'm wondering is, did the test scores get better using these materials? And that would be a data point that I would love to see, because right now, I can compare this standard and that standard and this curriculum and that curriculum, and it's pretty darn subjective, right? Even teachers compare it. It's a subjective evaluation. However, when we have probably 1,000 kids or more actually using the product, if they did better, that would be an important piece of evidence for me.
Well, and to be honest with you, yeah, we're always going to look at the data, and so that should be coming in here real soon. But what I want to caution us to be very careful with, and not that we want to compromise this at any time, that when you're talking about new materials, it's just like anything that we receive or get or get our hands on that's new to us. It takes a little bit of time to to achieve success and to really understand and dig to the point that we fully understand how we're going to use these materials. And it's going to happen no matter what it is that comes into onto our laps or into our classrooms that is new. So, you know, when you look at the data, absolutely, we want to see where that places us in retrospect to, you know, years in the past. But I want to be real cautious of that too. I mean, we want to look into some sort of trend. You know, you look at that over time. So it's not fair to say that immediately you're being judged on the fact that, you know, I don't think that's fair to our teachers. It's not fair to us as evaluators of the program.
I agree. I wish we had multiple data points to make a decision on, but we will have one data point, one good data.
We're trying to get there.
So we'd just like to see that, so that we have that piece of information. One of the things required by policy is a course of study for each class. And as we adopt, part of that course of study is the materials that are part of that program. So I presume that you're going to be bringing us updated courses of study for these classes.
Well, and that is some research that we have been doing, and you know, I've contacted some other schools, and they don't have anything that is in reference when you're talking about the younger grades. They don't have anything that is specifically a course of study unless you happen to be a private school or, you know, some religious-based school. They have a course of study, and you look and review that. There are some very specifics that they have related to the course of study, and it's really about, you know, their beliefs and those sorts of things. So, you know, there are descriptors of things like we're developing frameworks that are specific to ELA and what's expected when you're a K-2 student versus a 3-5 student versus a middle grade student. So those frameworks are being worked on as we speak. But to say that those are specific courses of study, then, you know, that's...
Well, if I could add, Mr. Berger, with courses of study, even in college, they'll have one book that the teachers teach from. When we get into the elementary grade levels, and you look at literacy, for example, and the 5 different elements of literacy, teaching is extremely an artful profession. So there isn't going to be, for example, we have the Journeys reading series. They don't stay just on that. If they're focusing on, let's say, determining importance, that is a strategy. And this is where elementary is different than high school to some extent, but high school still works on these primary literacy things as well. Determining importance, inferencing, things of that nature. That is where they're going to use literary-based material, informational text. They may come to the library and get one of these books in here. They're not going to have just one book. So I think the way that we're defining a course of study, in most situations, it's here's the course, the description, and the book that will be used. K through 6 is very much not like that. Very much more broad in the way that it's done. And that's probably why we found there weren't any courses of study. That policy really needs to be looked at to say we are going to adopt either curriculums or the state standards, something to that effect. But courses of studies, I'm going to take a leap here, but I bet we've never even had one in this district for elementary. I've never worked in a district that has, to be quite honest. In high schools, you will see them randomly depending on the particular topic.
Yeah, Todd, if there were specific subjects that, yes, courses of study would be developed, but by and large, as we talked about, the state model curriculum was the adopted curriculum by our Board of Education for years. So where the state said this is the model for math, English, science, social studies, etc., our board adopted those as our courses of study. So, but again, if you get into the specific courses that are not the mainstream, yes, you'll find courses that right. So, I'd like to make come back to one point, or just it's been made, but I think it's worth repeating. What I'm hearing you say, Tammy, is that when you're committed, look through these materials, that it was, perhaps, correct me if I'm wrong, it was not a top priority to make sure that the book aligned with the Common Core. Is that fair?
That's correct.
Okay.
So in other words, if all of a sudden Ohio says, we're gonna stay with the standards we have now. We're still good with walk-in purchasing. It was like Journeys that was in the process of being purchased when I became superintendent. Well, they slapped a Common Core sticker on the side of that to make it marketable as well, but we haven't even used it for that.
I think it's important that we fully understand, Mr. Brown, you made the comment, our targets. We need to understand
Right.
what those are. And it's up to us to accelerate those. And I think it really comes with, equipping our teachers with the best materials possible. And then the teacher is to provide that rigor and those opportunities in the classroom to raise that level of achievement. So, the tools are being laid in their lap, if you will, and it's up to the teacher. And you put the best teacher in the classroom that you possibly can, then that will come to life. And that's that art and science piece that we always will talk about. And it's, those materials can be as minimal or as broad. If you were to take those books away, if we were not to adopt, I bet you would find that our teachers would find the materials to make sure that they raise the expectations to assure that the students are learning in the classroom by resources that are available to them.
Well,
So
the standards are the minimum.
Exactly, and that's why I say
The
that.
Common Core standards probably doesn't even address up to calculus. We're already offering well above what the Common Core or our current state standards offer. We've surpassed that. That's always been the minimum for us, and it's not tough enough, the current minimum. No doubt about it. Even the minimums of the Common Core, they're the basis, but we're going to have to surpass those with the quality of kids we have in Springboro. We've put Project Lead the Way into place. They're looking at, they've added 2 or 3 new AP courses. I know they're looking at more. We're looking at how we can do internships. We're going to get involved with STEAM. We just met with Lakota School District last week. So our bar is increasing to raise drastically over the next 3 to 5 years. All these state standard things are minimal to this district. Now, if there's others that you would like to see increased, which is what Massachusetts, Indiana, a lot of these states have done, by all means, let's increase the level of rigor.
I guess I didn't ever hear the answer to my question about courses of study. It is in policy that there's to be courses of study. You're asking for a physics book, a high school math book. I mean, to me, those seem right for courses of study. We've had a discussion that the course of study that you might use for high school class where it's a single subject, and it might be, it's relatively easy to lay out the sequence of learning and say that, we're going to use these books for this course of study. That seems pretty straightforward, and we've had that discussion as somewhat more difficult in elementary because a lot of these topics are, I guess I'll say, hit over and over and over again throughout the year. But I still think that it's incumbent on us to understand what kids need to know in first grade, second grade, third grade, elementary school, everywhere. And we ought to have that consolidated in a document that's a Springboro document. And I agree that the standards, whether they be the Ohio's current standards or Common Core or whatever else we might choose, we don't want them to be the floor. Or I'm sorry, we want them to be the floor, not the ceiling as the lingo goes. However, they become the target. And alternatively, so if we just reference the standards and we don't have a course of study, well, the standards become the target. And if you aim at a target, you just might hit it sometimes. And I'm not sure that's where we necessarily want to be. So I think that you owe us a course of study. Maybe the only change is the material and the content of the course of study is exactly in the sequence and the program philosophy and the goals and the testing mechanism and all that stuff is exactly the same. The only thing that changes is the book. That's fine, but we still should have that course of study that references the updated materials. Thank you.
Item 8.4.
What I would like to recommend is that we consider a reduction in force for our full-time gifted coordinator position. And I'm recommending that we contract with the Warren County Educational Service Center for a part-time per diem position for the 2014-15 school year. The purpose of this recommendation is to look at, and we've been kind of researching our data and our student information that is relevant to our gifted population, and looking at our students that are in the superior COG in the middle grades, and when that information, you know, is so gleaming to me. We've got 189 students that have scored in the superior COG level, and to me, those students, you know, with what was demonstrated by our students earlier today in the projects and what they produced, is evident that we need to begin looking at that. And we've investigated the project Lead the Way to the point where we have committed ourselves at the high school level. We want that moved to the junior high level over time. And so we were putting, you know, some of these plans for the gifted programming in line with our proposals, not only through the adoptions, through the project-based learning, through opportunities for STEM and STEAM. We were looking at that for our middle grades, and then ultimately with the potential of doing some further research for our elementary level. And with that comes some dedicated work and effort that I truly believe that needs to be directly proportional to what takes place in the classroom. With those high numbers, I really feel it necessary that we take some of those administrative responsibilities and kind of dedicate that towards, again, the research and looking at our educational programming and assuring ourselves that we're supporting our kids at all levels.
Well, to recap last year, when we went through this, we tried then to find out, did we need a full-time gifted coordinator or not? If we couldn't get a straight answer, somehow our new treasurer come on the scene within 3 hours was able to show us the exact language that said, you don't need a full-time gifted coordinator. So right now, we're with benefits and everything over $100,000 for this position. So clearly, we knew that last year, and it was discussed then that if we found out otherwise, we would reduce the position.
The only thing I'm actually looking for, there was a study by U.S. News that came out, and there was rankings, and I remember, I won't be able to find it on part of education's webpage. The only thing it was really telling me, and I know this wraps into this conversation up, but you know, I think this is more about the high school, if I'm not mistaken too, but I think it was targeted towards the high school because it was talking about ACT tests and stuff like that. So there was an analysis, I'm assuming that's more high school than it is anything else. That Wyoming, I believe, was in the top 3 schools of an Ohio school district, maybe the top 5. And memory, we were 93, 96, and this maybe was last year's ranking. And forgetting about that rank number, the thing that hit me was that they had this analysis of number of children tested for AP, I think, or something. Okay. And again, I'm going to get the number wrong, but it'll be close. Somewhere in the 80% of students tested, and the received or awarded was 73, 79. And this was Wyoming. This was the other hill, Indian Hill, you know, and there was a couple others that were ahead of us. Mason. And then there was Springboro, and I'm going to get the number wrong. I think 29% was the number that tested, and 23% was the number that passed. Is that a wrap into this conversation on gifted? Because isn't this AP or this thing kind of connected somehow?
Well, we've had some discussions about that. Last year, we actually started researching what it would take for more kids to be taking that test. The numbers were somewhat increased. They are continuing to look at it. That is a discussion they're continuing to have. I mean, this year, with adding in Project Lead the Way, we jumped 14 points. So I think at the same time, you have to, there are a lot of little things you can do to jump yourself up in the ratings. But the intent is to have a comprehensive high school that's well-rounded and offers a lot of opportunities to kids first. And then along the way, you're able to do those. Because some of these districts that do test all of their kids, some of them don't do very well. All that statistic showed, to my understanding, was more of a pass-fail type grade for kids that took it. But our kids who do take it, we see majority 4s and 5s. So we're looking at what's the pros and cons of more kids taking it, not taking it. But as far as the kids who do take it, they score well. That just looks at the number of kids taking it. But yeah, that piece of information was looked at closely.
Yeah.
I know Mr. Martin actually brought it up the other day, the first time I met him himself. It's something he's looking at as well, so.
Yeah, I don't know if it's rounding or unrounding, I'm not gonna dispute that, I mean.
I'm not positive you should.
Yeah, I guess I'm just, and I'm not even looking at ratings or rankings, to be honest, I'm just trying to, you know, I know Wyoming, I mean, if those are, if that's an accelerated standard or a enhanced standard above the core minimum, I don't know what it takes to make it happen either, but it seems like if that helps, maybe we should be accelerating the theory of how to get it to 90 or 80 or 70%, and the results are the results. I mean, it might be some.
A lot of those are adding AP courses, adding even new foreign languages, and I know, talking with Dr. Bond last year, it's a process to add some of these classes in, because you have to start them with very low numbers and let them build over time so that they begin to repeat as things the kids take generically throughout the schedule. So it's quite the investment when you look at Oakwood or Wyoming, these places. They have a lot of money invested in those things. So I mean, on the business aspect of things, we do have to weigh the investment and the risk, everything together to make sure it's efficient economically.
But this is the same theory that you brought up, moving things down in the continuum, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Correct. I just want to make sure I understand. Okay, I'm just pointing out something that there's something that we can do to help. Seems like there's a big difference. I don't normally compare, but I'm just trying to, it's pretty striking when you got 60, 70, 80, 90%, and Springboro now 14.
Yeah, well, I know they still are, that $75,000 on there, they have bullseye on that multiple different ways now. So there's different ways they're looking at using that to add some of these things as well.
Thanks.
Anything else? Okay, item 8.5.
It is my pleasure to introduce to you Amy Romas. I don't know if you all know her or not, but she is our educational technologist throughout the district. We were talking about adding another educational technologist earlier this evening to help infuse technology within our classrooms at the secondary level. Ms. Romas has worked tirelessly over the past year to implement Google Docs and Google Drive throughout all grade levels, starting at grade 3 and up. And she is here to talk to you a little bit tonight about utilizing some of our staff's expertise in the use of technology infused into the classroom. So I will let her take it from here.
Thanks for having me, everybody. I really appreciate this. What you have in your hand right now is a proposal. I heard about, different people at the high school doing the innovative grants, and then it got my wheels turning. I'm like, we could do a lot, but we need some money. So basically what I'm doing is I would like to propose a digital technology academy to happen in Springboro for our teachers. Right now, it's hard to get teachers for PE. Think about it. You're all moms, you're dads, you're busy. You go home, you've got homework to do. Teachers are the same way. There's no time for professional development. And at this time, we're throwing Chromebooks and Google and all this stuff at teachers' plates. It's a lot. So my advice here is I would like to start a digital technology academy and start pretty small. Basically, with the growing number of all the technology, our teachers need to keep up with the kids. We have some really smart kids in this school and this room, and we need to keep up and make sure the teachers are on top of the game and that they're not nervous with the technology, that they feel very comfortable with the technology and integrating it into the curriculum. I always kind of say this when I talk. I would always love it when I was a first grade teacher and the tech guys would come in and put 5 and 6 computers in front of me and say, here you go. Well, that makes teachers really nervous. You can have the devices, but if you don't know how to use these in your classroom with little kids, with big kids, they're useless. You have to be able to show them to use them. So basically, I want to provide a comprehensive professional development opportunities, not only for the summer, but to go on for the entire year. Basically, my project proposal, I'm not going to read everything on here, but I would like to create, like I said, a small technology academy. And we've done this in Springboro in past years, but I want to grow a little bit more. In past years, we've given teachers a chance to come in to take, 5 and 6 classes during the summer in June. Well, you think about it, June is not prime time. We're all kind of tired. I surveyed the teachers and I said, if we would offer something like this, when would you like to have it? And they all agreed beginning of August, because that way we want to take all the materials that we've learned and apply it to our classroom. So what I would like to do is offer around 20 or so classes, and I'll explain all that later, August 6th, 7th, and 8th. And basically we're going to have a team of about 10 teachers, very tech-savvy teachers, teachers that are excited to integrate the technology into the curriculum, come in and teach teachers. Almost like a mini university for Springboro. And we have also partnered with Ashland University. I am a member of the adjunct faculty there, and basically if the teachers come in and take so many, almost like seat hours, complete a couple assignments, turn them into me, they will have the opportunity to buy a credit of Ashland graduate credit if they would like to. If they don't want to, that's fine too, because you're in there, you're learning, and it's in small groups with your peers. It's not like when you go to a college class, you sit down and you might never see the people again. These are all Springboro teachers. So if I'm sitting next to a high school teacher, we take a class, we can go back and then we can communicate. We can say, hey, I'm using this in my English class, how are you using this in your second grade classroom? So it's just to build basically a community of learners here in Springboro. Some of the project details for this August 22nd session, I do have a whole matrix, and if you guys would like access to that, I'll give you this. Basically, I'm putting on about 22 different classes. I've gone through and teachers have been amazing. I just kind of said, who wants to help? What do you want to teach? Let's get this done. People raised their hand and they said, oh, we'll take this class, we'll take this class. Some of the classes that we all are offering, we like to offer are different smartboard lessons. We have made such a huge investment in smartboards in our district. The PTOs have given so much for smartboards. Let's make sure we're using them correctly, that it's not just a display device. We're going to have classes on Google Apps for Education, because if you guys have any middle schoolers, or really even second graders, they're all using Google. I get frantic calls, at 7 o'clock on a Friday night saying, my son or daughter needs Google help. Well, yeah, and teachers do too. So this is to help your teachers make sure that they know what they're doing in the Google environment. Some of the other things we're going to be talking about are different formative assessments, and obviously they tie in with technology. You can get some pretty quick data in a matter of minutes, which is really nice. And different classroom management and classroom applications. So basically a whole slew of technology classes. Some of the future things that I would like to do is I don't want this to just stop in August. I would like this to be continuous throughout the entire school year. So we're going to basically, almost like a university, we're going to have a summer session, a fall session, a winter session, and I'm going to get feedback from teachers. I know every single teacher in this district, and when I email them and say, what do you want? They get back to me really quickly, which is great. And some of the teachers have said, let's talk about some online learning. Our kids are learning online. Can you help us learn online a little bit better? Maybe the e-textbooks. Maybe if we have Pearson come in to do some PD for us as well, that would be great. Another part that I would really like, and Tammy helped me think of this one, is let's offer classes to the community. In my old district where I taught, I would teach community classes. I might say, okay, on a Monday night, let's come in and I'll show you how to use your digital camera. People don't know how to use that sometimes. They might come in and say, hey, here's my tablet. How do I use this? My son and daughter is using it, but I need some help. So we are going to offer some classes for the community. Yes, please.
What we also talked about it in relationship to that is to have, as part of the community, is having parents come in, and we have the academy set up that no matter what it is that we adopt, that we have opportunities for them to come at a location so that we can share what it is and partner with whoever we adopt from, having them come in, also present, but also the teachers as well.
Yeah, I think that would be great. And as a mom in the community too, I would like to know that too. I'd like to know what my kids are learning. So it would help out a lot. Some of the benefits that I can kind of foresee is, like I said, teachers will be able to work in small peer groups, which I think is really essential. Basically, you're going to learn how to incorporate technology into your classroom. We have a lot of BYOT, bring your own technology kind of discussions. Well, let's, welcome that to the table and share your experiences so we're all stronger teachers. And basically, I think if we do this, we're going to better prepare our kids for college and the career. I really do. If our teachers feel strong and confident using the technology, it's going to really reflect on our kids as well. All right, here's the money. Basically, I'm asking for $5,000, which it's really hopefully not a lot in your eyes. the $5,000 to compensate teachers for their planning and the teaching time. When I pulled these teachers together, I think I had 1 person out of 10 ask, are we going to get paid? Teachers are dedicated, and they're going to do it. But if we ask them to do this and put the prep time in there, we have to pay them for their prep time and their class time. And it's going to be about $100 per class, because I think about it, and you'll have to help me out here. Teachers make, what, 25-ish an hour. So basically, it's their hourly rate is what we're going to pay them. Approximately 10 teachers are going to be involved in this. I would essentially like to hold about 40+ classes this year, kind of, in the various terms like I was talking about. I did include some budgeting for supplies in there, just in case if we need anything. I want to also expand this as well. I've already had a couple teachers say, can we do some online classes? Yes, I'd like to do some online classes and really expand this. The next thing I would also like to do is, I think Springboro is a leader. I look at other districts around the area, and we're doing things right. I get calls almost daily from other school districts saying, you're doing this, can we come and watch you? Well, yeah, let's get this academy really going, open it up to other districts and other teachers, charge teachers for coming in, and then that way, I'm not going to be here next spring saying, can I have more money? Hopefully it's going to be self-sustaining. That's kind of my long-term goal. Get other people in here, charge a little bit, use the money to basically just fund this every single year. And like I said, my goal is for Springboro to be a leader in the 21st century, and I think if we do this, our teachers are going to feel very supported. It's going to reflect in the classrooms, and it'll be a good thing. But you guys do have packets. If you have any questions, just let me know. Thanks for your time.
And that's the $5,000 comes from a $75,000 board grant for innovative.
I would just ask, did we budget that this year?
Yes.
I know we had it in last year's budget, but I got carried forward. It was that you stole my thunder. I mean, you were going through all that, and I'm thinking, gee, we could sell this to other districts.
Well, that's what I thought too. So.
You just proved that I'm not all that innovative, so I thank you for that presentation.
7,500? Yeah. Let's go for 10.
I didn't say
I'll tell you this. I mean, I don't have any, personally, I don't have any issue providing the seed money for this. I think it's a great idea. But we have coaches camps where the coaches are kind of soliciting outside business, if you will. And Mr. Petrie negotiated a deal with them, not to his tightness, his firmness. He's not a very good negotiator. So as you get this thing up and rolling, just keep that in mind.
You want 10, you're go for 15.
I'll take one more.
But if you do, I think the board sees the benefit of it. Don't limit yourself, because this is truly the investment of where we take the district to the next level.
Start small and make it.
Absolutely, we have to invest in the people who are in front of the kids for service.
great idea. And, let's see, we're on to 8.6. Yeah.
We just wanted to bring to the board that we are looking at possibly adding a 6th through 8th grade gifted intervention specialist. It goes along with what Mrs. Strickland talked about earlier, having this large amount of students that are in that superior cognitive range of our gifted program, and the data is showing that we really need to put some emphasis for those students, and this is one proposal that we've worked on to look at giving some extra special supports for those students to have particular activities above and beyond what they get in just the regular or the advanced classes, and really look at them particularly for things such as the junior high program that we saw earlier when we kicked off the board.
Okay. Item 8.7.
This is being brought forward by myself and Teresa Rand. This is creating a second high school intervention specialist. You were given an outline of what the reasons were beyond that, but a couple of specific things is, as we have been scheduling the high school, and just having talked about the gifted area, also our data proves out that we need to really look specifically at our high school with special education. We are purchasing through our federal funds some more of the Read 180 program, and the new program that goes with it is the Math 180. And these are programs that are specifically prescribed for students that have difficulty in accessing the general curriculum. And we are building the high school schedule around our special ed, one, to be more efficient with our aid usage, which here at the beginning of this past year, if you recall, we had to hire quite a few extra special ed assistants as we are having more students come in with higher risk disabilities. We also are looking at, beyond just the Scholastic Read 180, is that we are looking at, we have students that go out to outside programming, and now that we have these kinds of programs in place, we are bringing back some of those students that have been both at the Royal Mont Academy and the Union Day Academy, where they go for specific needs. And it will be a cost savings to be bringing when these kids are ready to transition back into the general environment, that we are prepared to do so. So those are the things that we are looking at. As I told you earlier, when we asked permission for that one special ed teacher a couple of months ago, we really are looking at trying to be compliant with what the state and the federal government discuss when they talk about our disability, students with disabilities. Some students are not counted just as one student. Through the state and federal government, they are either looked at as a 1.5 student or actually 2 students, depending on their disability. Those specific disabilities, we are getting more students with those types of disabilities. So as they move through our from the elementary, where they're just with one teacher, it does take more support staff in order for our students with disabilities to access a lot of the general curriculum at the high school, given that they have 6 or 7 classes that they go to each day. So that is the proposal for an additional high school intervention specialist for next year.
Lee, a couple of questions. One, what would the licensure be of this person that you're wanting to hire? Would it be an intervention specialist, or would it have any kind of specialized endorsement?
It's going to be mild to moderate. That's my understanding from Teresa, yes.
And would you foresee the need to have any more aides hired to work with this teacher as far as that goes, or is it too early to tell?
It's really too early to tell. The scheduling is almost done, so hopefully not next week, but with the following board meeting, Andrew and I will be able to present to you those numbers and what we are looking at. But Andrew has been at school go down for what, 2-3 weeks? On and off, back and forth, and we're getting very close to finalizing that for you.
You just said something about the scheduling being done for the school, like soon. And usually it's done August or late, or
We're working on it since before.
so this is like a good thing.
We have a goal of June 20th to have all schedules complete for the high school.
Good. Cool.
Okay, item 8.8, discussion of preschool.
My last proposal for the evening is we are looking at adding some days for the preschool assistants and also some increased time for preschool OT and PT. As you know, we are in our rounding out our first very successful year with our preschool program. But given the amount of things that need to be done, because of keeping it at 2 classes, we did not add a 3rd this year, although we were very, very close, actually within 4 students. So they've been running a really...
They added a class.
Yes, they would have. But there are some things, as you look on the proposal for both the preschool assistants, a lot of that is the paperwork, the PD, because one teacher has 2 assistants, and there's some additional things that they need to do throughout the year, but specifically here at the end of the year.
and with the preschool OT and PT, we forecasted that at the beginning of the year. You never know how many students in a program are going to be identified throughout the year to need those occupational services and the physical therapy. And so we are looking at needing 11 days to add to their calendar for next year.
And Jen Johnson, she is the preschool principal. She'll be here in August. We were going to do it this next time, but I want her to start the year off with what we offer in preschool, because I will tell you, she's done an outstanding job. Most principals would have been shivering in their boots if they were down to 4 open spots in a preschool program. They would have been adding a teacher. You have to understand, if we'd have been through the ESC, that would have been probably $150,000 to $180,000 added this year to our 5-year forecast. So she managed it extremely well, and that turned out to be very, very well. But just on the money side of things, academically, being able to get to know those kids that as early as 3 years old, they're going to be some of our severe IEP students. Developing that relationship with them is only going to accelerate student achievement to the highest potential, and that's what we're all about. So luckily things worked out well this year. Going into next year, we're still looking, Help Me Grow is a government-funded, basically students who are going to need to be on IEPs that are, in short, more of the lingo in the pipeline of being addressed. We know there's already 21 that's already enrolled into Help Me Grow, which by all means, most districts would probably run out and add two whole classrooms for that, for a tune of $300,000. So we're going to manage through that and see how many kids actually enroll. But once again, these are based off of the IDEA Act of 1972 that lays out special education requirements by federal law. So this isn't something that we're just estimating by any means. But according to the data that we're getting now and looking at preschools and Help Me Grow, there is a possibility we could have quite the influx next year into preschool, which then is going to impact kindergarten, first grade. We're going to create this bubble system over that we're going to see in the high school coming in a couple of years. So we're watching those numbers closely, and you know, by October of next year, I think we'll have a good grip on what's going to happen. So which might mean we're going to have to add a teacher after the year starts. We're a unit. It's a teacher, 2 aides. It's what's required. So we'll see how things go from there.
Okay, 8.9, public participation on the work session. Anybody?
Do you want me to just stand here and move up? Oh,
Give her a microphone.
Make sure it's on. Is it on?
Green light.
Tap the top.
We haven't been to the digital academy yet.
I need to go learn how to use the Chromebook. Stephanie Benjamin, 35 Fry Court. Just have a couple questions from work session, and these may be something that I need to just send to somebody to find out. Gifted, we keep talking about Superior COGAT, which is wonderful, but do we get money for 6th through 8th for COGAT or 95 or above on Iowas?
We do get money for those.
Okay, as a mother of somebody does not have COGAT kids but has high Iowa testing, I have a 6th grader, and if we're getting state money because he's a 95 and above on Iowa, but he's not going to get gifted services, I'm a little disappointed. I've been very excited about everything we've ever had. So, and that was just when I gave the statistic for the Superior COG. That's the research that we're doing, because that's exactly what we want to be able to do with the middle grades. Okay. It's with the project Lead the Way that we hopefully will bring to. That is our intent with board approval, is to bring project Lead the Way to those middle grades, not next year, but the following year, but then also look at the service model that would be supported through what Mrs. Vincent had proposed. That just happened to be a statistic that I gave. Okay, so the people that would be involved would be 95 and above and COGAT, or just COGAT? No, you're doing the research on that to look at the numbers and to provide that service for next year. Yeah, because you've heard me talk before about how much I love the gifted program and how impressed I've been.
But we've gone to 6th grade, and I see where we need it, because suddenly enriched classes are 87 and above on in Iowa. And, you know, we have kids that have been in classes with people for years that have had 97 and above. So they're not real challenged. And there, so I'm happy. I just hope that if we're getting funding for both kind, that in 6th through 8th, that we look at both Iowa scores and COGAT. And the other question I have on, and I may have missed this may have been in a lot of emails that we get, but as also a mom that has digits feedback, my 6th grader says digits their tests have questions that are never covered in class, and he doesn't like it because it's not personal teaching at all. Now, I don't know if that's because he's gone into 6th grade and it's not elementary anymore. I mean, that has been a challenge for us on that. But I'm just telling you, and I'm not sure a lot of us gave feedback, and that's bad on us. But I think probably we need to ask Digits parents, because, of course, Facebook, anybody can say anything. But on Facebook, moms aren't happy with Digits at all. And kids that liked math before do not like math now. So you know, that just bothers me, because if we're not liking the first part of Pearson and we're going to keep going with it, that's a problem to me. And Mr. Regano brought up a good point. I didn't come to the high school thing because I have a 6th grader. Should I have come for high school adoption? Yeah, I guess I should have, because the books he's going to use in high school are what you were talking about. But when it was sent out for high school parents. So you're right, you do have to look a little bit further ahead. And if we're going to go to all this, are we going to provide Chromebooks for everyone? If we're going to go to all the e-books?
We do have BYO that we're applying.
But what if kids don't have the money or have parents that are willing to do it?
We do have those Chromebooks here and available in the building.
Oh, we have hardback books?
And we do have hardback books, yes.
Okay, but when we go to the Pearson style or whichever one we choose, isn't it going to be e-text like my son doesn't have a math book to bring home. He brings home his Chromebook.
And Digits is the only one.
Okay.
Through that, the ELA obviously has the books.
Okay, okay. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, Kelly Cole, 7141 Four Horse Drive. I did want to mention that I don't care what side of the political continuum you're on, you have to get knowledgeable about what Common Core really is, what the agenda is, and please get involved. Ohioans Against Common Core. I have to say that if you all look at Pearson acquisitions, you will see that they have purchased at least 18 of the large manufacturers of the education materials, which means that almost everything will be from Pearson. The complaints about the math is the complaints across the country, and they're significant. Children are crying, leaving the school system saying, I hate math. I know because my 6th grader years ago started hating math, and it was all because of the instructor, not the curriculum. But he hated math for 2 years. And he's finally catching up, and he's finally liking math again. So the instructor can make a huge difference, but the curriculum can make an even bigger difference. And trust me, I don't know if teachers are brave enough to say what they really feel about this confusing math, this fuzzy math. I hope they start talking. I hope they start telling people what's going on, because it's not just confusing math. It's going to set up the children for a common set of curriculum in math and English. And just what Jim Regano said is that it is a significant reduction in the quality of education to go to Common Core. If you're adopting Pearson, they're going to be Common Core aligned because they're under contract with Achieve to do so. And there are other curriculums out there. There is Singapore Math that is a higher grade. Never heard a complaint such as what we're hearing now about the Common Core aligned materials. And there is an English language. Sandra Stotsky, the expert in English language, who wrote the standards for Massachusetts, who leads the nation in the academics, volunteered to, for free, come to your district and especially help the state out, come up with the standards that we can all live with that are an upgraded version, which is what our students are here for. Our students are the ones that are sitting here ready to learn. And I don't want to see them dumbed down with Common Core, Pearson books, online learning. Things that you adopt today can be changed with the push of a button tomorrow. So you can look at it, you can like it, and you can move on, but know that that doesn't matter because tomorrow it may be a different textbook than you just approved, because it's easy to do with online books. I want you to take your time. Tomorrow is a rally from 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock at the Capitol building. It's Ohioans Against Common Core, a big rally to push for the opt-out bill for Ohio to opt out, HB 237. There are many bills coming through, HB 487, which is asking for a lot of provisions to prevent something like this from happening again. We really have to just get ourselves out of the federal ed program and get back to what our students deserve, which is a more rigorous program than what we had, and much, much more rigorous than what Common Core has to offer. Thanks.
Thank you. Anything else? 8.10, any other business?
Mr. President, I guess in January I brought up a question on medical eye exams, and the doctor who I diagnosed my son would like to come and talk about it. We may be doing it, I don't know, but I don't know if there's been any movement on exactly what she does or what's available to be done for kids. And I'm wondering, I told her there's a 3-minute time limit, and I didn't know if this topic would be permissive if she was trying to get out her surgery or child care and everything for the meeting that's available in July. I didn't know if it would be 5 minutes or so, or would be some latitude there. She just giving her time explaining what she does, explaining the nature of the disease, what it looks like, and maybe it's something that we can listen to and we can click something else. Maybe we're doing it, I don't know, but it's not just a simple eye exam that kind of happens in school. So, and then maybe that can connect her to the nurse and do some other conversations, but I'd like to know if that'd be possible. And then when she sends her email to you, it's, so thank you very much.
What's your name?
Dr. Fresco, over in Springboro, eye care.
This is the doctor who helped your son on your eyes.
Yeah, just with the simple eye test. And that, well, the simple eye test was the easy part. It was the eye muscle stuff that got rid of his headaches, and it was 6 or 8 weeks of treatment, which in our case, we got, I'm sure nobody had this treatment. So the diagnosis is kind of good.
So you feel better?
Yeah, no more headaches. And so, you know, that's after 4 years of headaches. For no glasses, no nothing, just working on eyes. So, you know, it's something that we do great. It's something the hands of love to see in school. The parents make things better.
Full of parents.
Good.
Thanks.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Roll call. Motion, or meeting adjourned.